Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time for the Comics Aficionados. And it's been a tumultuous couple of weeks, 6 weeks, I guess, now here in the comic book industry. And we've seen some people rise to the occasion. We've seen some people wilt under the pressure, under the lights of what's going on. And we're gonna cover that all here today and talk a little bit about. Also, we're going to talk about some of the frequently asked questions that DC put out with some of their answers regarding their distribution. So we are going to add on a little bit about what we talked about last week. And with us today, we've got back in the saddle again is Corbin. It's been a few months. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing okay. It's been a minute, but I'm happy to be back on with y'all. I've been able to keep up with the show while I've been gone, so I've been taking in great content, and just happy to be back. It's been a while, like you said, so excited for sure.
Well, we're very excited to have you back, brother. And also with us, of course, is the curmudgeon of Critical. Anyway, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Things are looking up. It's been a really fantastic week. So yeah, it's really good.
Yes, it sounds like your sales are actually going up during all this.
Yeah. That new the new system that we put in place has back issue buyers pretty stoked, and collectors, vintage comic collectors, happy. So that's been going well. It's been going well.
So what's the system? Do you finally have an e-commerce site or something?
No, we've been doing it by appointment. Our appointment
nice.
system. People really like, especially, I guess, the whales and the people who have some means have really taken to being the only people in the store and just kind of wander around at their leisure, and we give them a drink, and they sort of chill and spend lots and lots of money. So that's worked out pretty well. It's not something I really would want to go with full time, but it's been a really good stopgap measure. So
perfect. Perch, of course, you are a retailer that's in between stores right now. Have you heard of other successes like what Pele's doing, where they're maybe doing appointment only visiting and getting some good whales in?
Yeah, I think a few stores have adopted that model, and either by appointment or just having the time, the breathing room to have more customer service. I think almost more than, I just speculate on Pele's situation, but I think it's almost more that when you get out of the grind of having to deal with too many comics a week, 80 some odd, 100 some odd comics a week, and putting all that stuff in, you can devote more time to your customers. So shops that are having the time to do that are seeing some success. They're able to provide that service that maybe a lot of customers have been really looking for.
And last but not least is my co-host, Doc. What's up, buddy?
I'm good. I just you caught me mid yawn there.
Perfect. So we're synced up with my Twitch channel now, so this is going to be streaming both on YouTube and Twitch. And in the future, when I do interviews, I've been doing them kind of offline here in my StreamYard studio. Those interviews are actually going to be conducted on Twitch. And after this, I'm going to be talking with Perch about some changes in the market, and then after that, I'm going to be talking with Corbin about our assessment of Batman: Curse of the White Knight live on Twitch. Probably would be about 40 minutes to an hour total. So if you can't get enough of us here, you might want to go check us out there. And the link to our Twitch channel is in the video description. So it's time to start talking about our topic today. And it feels like really DC and Jim Lee have taken the lead in the comic book industry, and are really they're making changes. You see Jim Lee doing a lot of charity work for comic shops. But they've addressed the distribution problem, with Diamond Comics kind of being a single point of failure. They also have changed their digital strategy. Not sure what that's going to be long term. Pele, is this what you expected out of Jim Lee? Based on his history in the industry.
Not at all. This is a little bit. This is I don't know really what I expected from Jim, but I didn't expect anything quite this drastic or quite this innovative. He kind of strikes me as a person that just kind of agrees with what's going on, or he kind of just goes with the status quo. But I'm pretty impressed. I think that there's large issues here. and I don't know if I trust this yet. But I'm going to take a wait and see approach on it, and hopefully, hopefully this doesn't go the way of previous attempts. So,
All right, Doc. What are your thoughts on this, buddy?
Actually, this does not at all surprise me. Primarily because, like, look, I as I've said a number of times on this channel, I'm a huge fan of Wildstorm, which was Jim's company that got bought up by DC in the late '90s, and there's a book that I don't know if anybody's it was done by a another big Wildstorm fan. It was called Wild Times: The Oral History of Wildstorm Studios, and I know you can buy it on Amazon. He wrote it, self-published it, and everything. It's good, but it talks about a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. And back in the '90s, when the whole industry was falling apart, you had a lot of companies like that had popped up in previous years that were all falling apart really quickly. Jim's not a vocal leader. He's not an outspoken person. He doesn't come out, and he's not like, the guy, he's not a Stan Lee. He's not coming out there and being, in the spotlight, talking to the media. He's not the way that Joe Quesada was. But he's a guy that will lead very quietly from behind the scenes and knows how to navigate difficult times. He found ways for Wildstorm to get into just about everything in the '90s to keep the company viable and keep everybody working. Even when, it didn't matter if it was making, like drawing cards for collectible trading card decks. It didn't matter if it was doing promo art for TV and film. There was so many things that Jim got Wildstorm involved in just to keep the company going when the rest of the comics market was falling apart. And if you want to understand how Jim works, I really highly recommend picking up the book Wild Times, an Oral History of Wildstorm.
So, Perch, is this what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the statements that are said below. I think Jim Lee's been kind of an uneven leader in the sense that he's not the guy jumping in every single time, and definitely agree with the public statement. He tends to not want to operate in the public space. But he has the business acumen to do this. He has some of the history to do this. So this isn't a surprise in the sense that he knows how to do it. I think the key in all this, and it underlies all the decisions and the things being made, is Jim Lee does have a drive and a motivation to make sure that he's building a company, or he's building a business. And right now you look at this situation and you say DC wants to remind everyone, hey, we're still in business, we're still making comics, we're still in this to win. And that's what they're doing. They're getting ahead of the PR message. They're taking steps in many different places, from distribution to digital to everything. I mean, they're playing it in all the spaces to make sure that they're actively managing their business. They're not sitting back and just waiting for it to end so they can get back to business as normal. They're taking the opportunity to proactively manage this time. And I think that definitely fits with Jim's character. Jim just has often preferred to be in the background, like people are saying.
So, kind of juxtaposed to that is CB Cebulski and the management over at Marvel, where early they came out and they said that we're going to offer deep discounts, no returnability, which DC also offered about the same time, which DC did offer about the same time, but Marvel offered deep discounts, and that's basically the last thing that we've heard from them. Perch, would you have expected them to come out with anything, to address the situation that's going on with comics right now?
Yeah, I would have hoped, maybe not expected. So, I mean, an interesting thing about Disney as a corporation, and here we're talking more Disney than than Marvel. They are very guarded in what they tell people. They do tend to move a lot slower in response to news like this. They check with 800 lawyers. They go through all these steps, and there tends to be a lot of paralysis of, we don't know who to, we don't know if we can say something, so we better say nothing. It's better to say nothing than say something wrong and get in trouble. It is so that's to be expected to some extent. It's what we've seen from the company. It's what we've seen from Disney. However, it's what's not expected is, one, CB Spolsky was hired to be an emissary. He was hired to be somebody who did have a relationship with fans, who could be a good mouthpiece, who would do this. And we've seen that kind of stumble and almost fall apart from the beginning with the whole Yoshida thing that went on, and just he never became that role quite like I think people thought. But the other part of it is Marvel, from a competitive standpoint, is just letting DC own all the news. Their DC's going first. They're putting out statements. People are now going to them for kind of what they think of the comic industry. It's interesting to watch people like Forbes and others start to say, well, what's the future of the comic industry? We should go ask DC because they're in the news. They're giving statements, and they're just bypassing Marvel to do it. So it's a huge misstep for Marvel. And it just, no matter what happens at this point, unfortunately for them, they're going to look like a Me Too kind of company. Either they wait it out and they're seen as not doing anything, or they hop onto one of these other distribution methods that DC has kind of done the legwork and set up for them. They're letting other companies drive their future, and that's both surprising and disappointing.
Yeah, CB kind of had his nuts chopped off of him, like right from the get go.
Yeah.
Doc, basically it was leaked that his pen name when he was writing manga for Marvel when he was in Japan, it was basically used to somewhat humiliate him and cut off his legs so he would have less leverage and less standing, in the industry, and it worked very effectively.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he got undercut from the minute he was in there. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if it was Joe Quesada and Tom Brevoort that leaked it, because Axel was Joe's right-hand man and hand-picked successor when Joe went to the C level and they needed a new EIC. So him getting his buddy, him being the guy that replaces Joe's buddy, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they were the ones that leaked it just to humiliate him and take away any of the power that he had.
So I heard it was somebody else.
It could be, but I'm just saying that it wouldn't have shocked me.
But it was certainly by design. It was very intentional. Of course, I believe it was leaked originally to Bleeding Cool, who's now stating that people are going to them for their information because they're the only reliable source out there. Pele, as a retailer, have you expected more from Marvel? Do you expect anything from Marvel now?
Yeah, yes, I did expect a lot more from Marvel, and I thought that they would make more of a push into digital, at least to keep things alive. And frankly, I just have to wonder if they care at this point, and if they just, it really gives a lot of I don't give a shit kind of attitude, from them that, okay, well, we'll be back and don't worry about it and all this, but not really actually doing the work behind the scenes to ensure that their company will do well going forward. Maybe they are, but I've not seen any evidence of it. And it's been horrible. Their response has been non-existent. So I really don't know. It's like I've been asserting for a couple weeks now that I kind of wonder if there are people behind the scenes that are just secretly trying to destroy the direct market, and it's probably not the case, but it does look suspicious, and I just really disappointed with them overall. What do you think, Perch?
Well, I don't think they necessarily think about the direct market in that way, positive or negative. I think that it's, if you've seen over the years, and kind of ringing my ears is what their attitude to digital in the early days and a lot of these other things. I think they just have an expectation that they've got a powerful brand. They have characters everybody wants. They're the leaders. and they'll go when they're ready, and people will wait for them, and it will happen when it happens, and they don't need to, they don't need to worry. They're the market leader. I think they exude that kind of overconfidence, and in times like this, they don't have a plan because they don't feel like they need to have a plan. And
so, I'm sorry.
No, it's just it's kind of on brand for them to a large extent, and it's I think it catches up. I think that if DC can use this time to really connect with comic fans and show some goodwill and show some good stories and say, no, we are committed and you're listening and all the rest. You saw the response with Rebirth when it first came out. People were all over it, and they did beat Marvel in numbers for several months during that period. If they can get a sustained run like that, where Marvel is going, the movie's going to come out soon, you're going to watch us anyway, then I think they're going to really shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how they can expect that the movies are going to go forward. This is going to be great, but the fans aren't going to stick around. Especially with the solid end that was Endgame. What's going to bring people back to the yard? It's going to have a lot of that momentum gone now since then, and they've gotten rid of Robert Downey. Cap's gone. There's a lot of questions about Hulk. All those iconic characters now are just off the board, and they don't seem to give a crap about the direct market and selling comic books. So there's too many questions. I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand. This is the time that they need to be knocking on the doors, and they need to be, really pushing it out, that they're still around and they're going to be doing great things, and we're going to try to help the direct market, and we're going to do this, and they're just sitting there with their thumbs in their butts. And it's just really disconcerting, and they don't act like a company that wants to stay around.
So Corbin, as a fan, are you comforted by what DC has done? Are you impressed with what they've done? Have they made any mistakes? Are you still reading comics now because of what DC Comics has done during this crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I've been slightly, I guess. I try to take a more positive approach of it in general. I mean, trying to constantly adapt to all the changes, obviously, in the industry. So what they've done has been, oh, wow, okay, like that's a pretty good move, at least in my opinion. Just being a customer, I have been, using this time to go a lot into back issues, really get caught up. Because a lot of comics, I have a very, very, specific pull box, so I've had to expand a little bit, or not had to, but I've had the opportunity to do that and really kind of develop the relationship with my local LCS as far as pickup orders and things of that sort. So hearing you guys talk about this was interesting to get a different perspective on it. But I will say that, I don't know. I guess DC kind of felt, and you guys talked about with Jim Lee earlier, where I kind of felt like, yeah, it was like go with the flow. Like they're going to kind of meander their way through it, and they'll figure out how it's going to happen as they go. But I feel like they've been a little bit more assertive in recent times, and also with this going on here, yeah, I am slightly optimistic about the fact that they're going, okay, you know what? We're really trying to make an active direction here to adapt in these times and continue to try to get books out, or at least available, and see where it goes from there. So for me, I'm completely on board with it. And you got to try something right now. You could be content to kind of sit in your hands and go, okay, we're kind of waiting. I know Marvel Unlimited was doing something interesting where they've been like, hey, read our classic stories and get like Marvel points for it. And that's kind of a direction I think some are taking and are going to take. But in this one as well, no, if you can continue to get access to these books, let's do it,
Absolutely. So we do have a super chat from SSJ Future. Go ahead. 62093, a.k.a. Josh, contributor to the channel. Marvel doesn't surprise me here. All it shows me is that there are some people at DC that care about comics, while Marvel really doesn't. This confirms to me that Marvel doesn't care about their fans. Ash, what do you say to that?
Interesting.
Oh, man. I'm still having some technical difficulties. So if I drop out, you know why. I think that I watched a pretty enlightening video last night that Joe Quesada runs, like that drinking podcast that he has.
Yeah.
And CB Cebulski was on last night. And listening to him talk, it was very enlightening because he didn't talk and have a presence that you would expect of like the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics. he had the presence of like the mailroom guy, while Joe Quesada and his buddies like Dave Johnson and I forget who all is involved in that podcast, just sort of talk shop about comics and things that they did in the past, and I was 1 year at Comic-Con, blah blah blah, and CD was just kind of just staring at the camera, just yep, I'm here, guys. And I was like, that like explains a goofy, fat idiot. So much to me, that he's just sort of a seat warmer. And they explained, they asked him something like, oh, how'd you get to be, how'd you get your start at Marvel? And apparently CD got his start as a translator. That's how he got into Marvel, because he speaks multiple languages. So that's how he got his foot in the door. And then apparently he was editing some X-Men books, and he just sort of fell into things here and there. He talked about like, what just turned out one guy lost his job, and they needed someone, so they just plugged me in, and I was like, this is, and it's me just drawing speculation. Everything is just me observing things and making my own reasoning. So don't take this as science. It's not hard facts. It's just one man's opinion. But
kind of thought too.
I really do feel like Marvel has become super corporate. It's all about just managing a brand name, and they realize that brand comes from the comics, right? Like it's that's what's made it all. Like you could sell Captain America baseball hats and things like that, but it's the comics that are the reason that the memorabilia exists, and people are buying T-shirts so they know they can't really just cancel the comic line, because then it's like eventually the days are numbered on the memorabilia too. Like it would run for a while, but eventually new things would come out. It's just like no one thought no one would want Star Wars toys, and now here we are in the future where no one wants Star Wars toys. So memorabilia needs something to keep it going. And so the comic industry for Marvel is important, and I get that feeling like they just sort of run it as like, we kind of just have to do this. But I didn't feel like an enthusiasm and interest. As a guy who used to go to Comic-Con religiously year after year and speak, shop with industry pros and things like that, and you could see that these guys, these old school guard, the way they talked about comics, it was like you could tell that they grew up as kids, like, and were like us, and they like just dreamed about being in the industry. And sometimes you could see like we're a little bit, maybe a little burned out from different things, because whenever you make something that you love into a job, it's never quite the same anymore. But you could still tell that these guys lived and breathed comics, and now it's more like, we got to deal with fans. They're sort of there. I wouldn't say that Marvel doesn't care about their fans, but it's just more of like they don't have that love for it. They don't have that pride of like, look at our fans love what we're doing. It's more of like, we think our stuff is great, and if our fans don't like it, it's their fault, and we just move on. And so that's I don't know. It kind of just it puts up everything into focus for me.
Well, I feel like there's a lot of again, this is another history book on comics industry, but the Marvel the Untold Story book, in case anybody has never read that, also highly recommend it. It doesn't seem like a lot of the guys have the same fire that those guys did that were interviewed for that book.
It's interesting because I think we, on the outside we're looking in. So of course we're seeing what's happening, and as people often point out to us, I think at times it's like, well, you're not inside, you don't really know, and that's true. A lot can be going on behind the scenes. But comics, any entertainment business, any business, it is a perception business in a lot of cases. And if a lot of people are seeing it this way, whether it is or it is not, then you do have somewhat of a problem. You're presenting, you're exuding out from your brand that you're just not completely in, that you're not completely committed to the thing that, you know, in many cases you're charging high prices for. So there is, whether there's a problem inside or not exactly, it doesn't necessarily matter, because to the customers, the people waiting, it's either this kind of, we're very passive, or silence. And that tends to kill business over time.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to say thank you very much to Josh for helping support the channel. Very much appreciated. We do have another a super chat from Atomic Hound, $9.99. One consumer's opinion: winners DC and Jim Lee, losers LCS owners who appear opposed to any change. Also, websites who allow them to grandstand. Thanks for a calm, reasonable discussion. Paley, you can empathize with some of these LCS owners that are opposed to some of these changes that DC has come up with, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, I can in the way that they, you know, they kind of get used to the same thing. You know, they like having Diamond. You know, they like the convenience of that. You know, the single point of access to get all their stuff and everything. But I think they're just going to have to innovate, and they're going to have to change their mindset in that regard. That what they loved most is also the single point of failure, and we saw that blaringly obvious, you know, right now, and it can't be allowed to be that way anymore. And because, you know, one bad month, and look what happened. You know, they lost everything, and or not lost everything, but, you know, everything has been put on ice, and you know, it can't be allowed to go on that way anymore. And I also think that LCSs really need to look at their business models and diversify, because if, you know, it's not enough to just sell new comics and pops and, you know, a couple other little doodads, you know, and think that you're going to be okay. You're not. You know, you're going to have to diversify. You're going to have to, you know, you're going to have to break out the space, you know, expand a bit and put some back issues in. You know, you're going to have to, you know, sell other types of merchandise if you're going to survive. And that's just the way it is. There's some places, maybe in Chicago, New York, etc., that you know, you can get away with just selling a single thing, but it's not going to be that way anymore. And those single places, unless you're in those strategic locations, it's not going to work for you. So you know, it's they're going to have to innovate. They're going to have to innovate or die, and they're going to have to expand their thinking to include, you know, different types of, you know, revenue streams. Otherwise, you know, they're not going to be around in a year or two, or they may not even survive this present apocalypse. So
I would want to say thank you very much to Atomic Hound for helping support the channel. We have another super chat. This one from Brian Ball, the writer of Rags. He's also a contributor to the channel. He says, I think the main issue is that everyone got comfortable with the way things were and failed to take advantage of technology and other methods of branding and delivery. It's laziness on both sides. Now, Perch, I think Brian might have hit it right on the head on this one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and this is what I talk about a lot. Look, whether you want your business to evolve or not, it's got to. The world moves on, and so you can sit there and you can scream about it, and you can say, you know, this isn't fair. I had gotten very comfortable and very complacent with the way things worked, but life moves on. And so if you fail to take advantage of technology, if you fail to have a shipping strategy, a distribution strategy, a digital strategy, an employment strategy, if you can't, you know, if you're Marvel in the 90s and you boost up all your artists and then they all leave you to Image, you can't sit there and go, oh, what happened? I made these guys. That's nice, but, you know, you've got to adapt. And it's definitely lazy. It's people did not feel motivated to change. And maybe it's because there was just not enough money in this industry for people, that they didn't feel like it was worth their time to change. Maybe they just got comfortable with living a very meager life, and it was just all they kind of expected out of themselves. You know, if you're never going to be a star athlete if you don't, you know, push yourself. So maybe that's what's going on. But it's definitely, you see a lot of people, and to, the earlier comment as well, the retailers who are now just putting up a fit about every single bit of change look like fools in this case. They just look like, I mean, no, can things just go back to the way they were? Of course not. That's just stupid. And I think those people are going to die.
I mean, I've probably talked to at least 50 comic shop owners since all this crap's gone down, and I would say that 2/3 of them are throwing tantrums right now, like Perch said. You know, they're woe is me, you know, and they're having a fit and they don't want to deal with it and all that. And then you've got, you know, a small percentage that are just, consigned that they're going to fail, and you know that it's just, oh, I guess it's over with now. You know, do you want to buy my inventory? You know, and they're just ready to roll over and die. And then you've got an even smaller percentage that are going, please help me, give me some ideas. What can I do? And those are the guys that excite me. Those are the people that are like, you know, please give me some ideas. Please, can you help me here? And I'm excited to help those people, you know, and give them some advice and to help them, you know, get into back issues and stuff like that, and to try to, you know, form a plan going forward for their business. But those people are few and far between from what I've noticed of the existing, you know, shop owner group. And that, like I said, it's not a huge group, you know, about 50 shops that I've talked to in the Southeast and a couple out West. But, you know, it's indicative, I think, of the current climate that people are, you know, they're not taking it well. They're not, you know, people don't like change, but they're not, so few people are looking at it as an opportunity. They're just looking at it as, you know, they're either disgusted and angry and throwing a fit, or they're just defeated already. And it's a bad scene right there.
So I do want to say thank you very much to Brian Ball. If you haven't checked out Rags yet, definitely do that. NewAgeNinjaCorps.com. He's got a great comic book there, got a great platform, and we love having him on the channel. Hopefully we'll have him on sometime very soon. We do have another retailer in the chat. Larry Comics Inc. is saying CB worked at my friend's comic shop when he was in college, and he's absolutely a huge comic fan. I believe that. I do believe that his nuts were cut off, you know, the first week he was on the job, and that was by design. But you know, not everyone is made out to be the face of a brand during a crisis, and I do think that he is maybe not stepped up to the plate probably as much as he or even the people at Marvel would want him to, or maybe they don't want him to. There's always the chance that they just don't want anyone out there talking about all this, and that could be really what it is. He's had another a comment as well, and we're definitely going to send this one over to Perch. Fans are hungry for new comic books to return, but man, do they want storylines they haven't read. Trade sales are through the roof. Haley has already said his sales are going up. Do you see trades becoming like the new hotness in comic books now that we've had all this time away from floppies?
I don't think necessarily the new. I mean, it's not necessarily the trade aspect. It's kind of what he said. And by the way, Larry's a great guy, runs a good business, and always good to get his insights here. And he is right. Cebulski is a fan, no doubt about it. I think we're some comments in the chat. I think there's some other things going on there, but I think with trades, it's less that it's trades. It's just people do want storylines they haven't read. They absolutely want them, and of course, in this time, you can go pick up, you know, multiple issues in a trade paperback. It's easy, it's convenient to do that. Part of the problem with floppies longer term has always been that, you know, how do you it's not necessarily easy to go buy 10 at a time. Yes, you can go to the back issues, but they're priced differently and everything else. As an entry consumable product, floppies can be trickier. Lots of comic shops figure that out, but they can be. But it is the key here is that I think what fans are showing us, and they've been showing us, is that readers want to read new stories. They want to read classic stories. They want to read new ideas. They do not want to read kind of these cookie cutter, you know, hamster wheel type stories. And one thing that I think has happened, particularly with Marvel, a somewhat extended DC, is these editors are bringing creators on for 6-issue or 12-issue runs. They reboot the title, and then they kind of go through it again. And it's not giving fans real big swing for the fences type storylines. And in many cases, creators are telling us this as well. They're saying, well, with no longevity and no promise of long-term work, we're told not to go out and do every crazy idea. We're told to kind of just, keep the lights on, tell a solid story that, for 6 issues may get extended to 12. I mean, imagine if you went to a Chris Claremont in his heyday and said, hey, I know you have these huge plans for the X-Men, but, we're going to give you just 6 issues at a time. So don't put anything in that comic that's really going to extend past 6 issues. And if you do well and it sells, we'll give you another 6 issues and then another and another. It takes away any power of storytelling. And I think that's what you see. And so fans are definitely telling us, no, we like big stories. Continuity is not our problem. We can get into it, but we want real stories we can sink their teeth into. And the comment you just put up, yeah, it scares me too. It's silent. Now, I don't believe Marvel, with their position in the industry and where they're at and the support from Disney and the IP and everything else, I absolutely believe that Marvel's not about to exit comics or anything like that. But I do think that arrogance and just this belief that the customers will be there when we're ready, when we come back, is an insane stance. And I do absolutely believe that's going to backfire them in a massive way. And I think there's a major correction coming from them.
So it's interesting. I've been reading a lot of Ed Brubaker, Captain America, and he had a nice sustained run on there. Wish it was longer, but there's really nothing on the market today other than maybe Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil that has a lot of meat to it. I guess you could say Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk as well. But you're right. Most of the runs are too short. They're not able to really add to the lore and really flesh things out and really do things with the character. It looks like James Tynion might be doing that with Batman over at DC, but we're not sure how long that run is going to be. But you guys definitely make a good run, because I'm actually loving this break from new comics, because I've been reading so many older stories and older runs that I've never, I've been meaning to get to, and I just never have the time because I'm always reading new comics. That it's been refreshing, because there are so many great stories and that are definitely worth checking out. And I just wish we got more stuff like that.
And hopefully we can get back there. I do think kind of there's in the chat as well. There's a major point to be made here of when the comic industry treats itself like comics are somewhat disposable and it really doesn't matter, and you're marketing the character. The idea here is that, hey, 100,000 people are going to buy Deadpool because it's got Deadpool in it. What's the story with Deadpool? Nobody really cares. It's just Deadpool's doing something. So, maybe for this issue, Deadpool can fight Doctor Doom and it can be wacky. And then 2 issues later, Deadpool can fight Kraven the Hunter and it will be wacky. And people are just there for Deadpool to tell jokes. And the story doesn't really matter. It's just, it's a self-contained kind of little story. That's kind of the guiding point to a lot of what Marvel does right now. And from an editorial perspective, that probably makes sense. You don't have to make long-term financial commitments. The art pay doesn't really matter. You can kind of cheap on kind of some of the incoming. And it's, it's probably a very easy title to maintain, especially if you're editing like 20 books. Just give me a solid Deadpool story and then we'll crank out another Deadpool story. That's it. But that is definitely does not work in the trade world. Who wants to buy a trade full of kind of go nowhere stories? And on top of that, it just the readers are never going to respond to that. So you see these sales drop. And Brian's comment here is exactly right. I mean, the trade can do great money if it's got a story, if people are going to cash in. But if people just get to waiting on the trade, they're not incoming buyers. And if they're not incoming buyers, it's going to weaken the power of that trade. So it's just it just starts to sink step by step by step.
Okay, so we are going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing. There was a frequently asked questions that DC just put out, and they had a lot of answers in there that were, all right, whoever's typing, you got to mute. That we need that they just had some frequently asked questions that answered a lot. There was some confusion about who was going to be using Lunar distribution, who was going to be using UCS distribution. Turns out it looks like they're both nationwide.
Wow.
So now, because of what the steps that DC has taken, there are now 3 distributors for LCSs to choose from: UCS, Lunar, and Diamond. Of course, Diamond being the mainstay, that was the nationwide distributor before. UCS is the child company of Midtown Comics, and this is where some of the debate with retailers is coming in. Lunar is a part of Discount Comic Book Service, and it's seen as there are now retailers are having to order and give their financial details to a competitor in the industry, which I definitely see the issues there. Hopefully they're going to separate those out permanently at some point. And they are going to be shipping a small number of titles, mostly reprints the first week, and a couple of new titles. I believe it's Daphne Byrne and The Dreaming. But there was also confusion about this. DC has not canceled their contract with Diamond. Diamond is still going to be DC distributor once they come back online, and they're planning on a mid to late May return to distributing comics. So retailers will now have a choice of who they want to order from: UCS, Lunar, who are going to be North America. Of course, Diamond is still the only worldwide distributor. So there is choice in the market now. I think this is healthy for comic books. Paley, what are your thoughts on the really big change that DC made during these hard times?
I think that I like it. I like the idea. I think that there are issues. There's problems with it. There's going to be some growing pains involved, but it's something that's been necessary for a long time. If they didn't do this, then I really don't see how Diamond was going to survive going forward as the hub for comics. It just took one really bad event to just blow them over. So it's been coming for a long time. Nobody should be surprised by this.
As somebody that watches way too many episodes of Bar Rescue, I feel like this was a stress test that they failed miserably.
Absolutely, and this had to happen, and it shouldn't have taken a pandemic to bring this about. But here we are. This is the state that we're in. We either fix it or we just go along with the same shit, and another problem comes along and Diamond falls down. They're the weak part in this chain. They're the weak link, and we have to redouble our efforts to make sure that the distribution chain doesn't crash like this again. So, this had to happen. It had to. And the people that are whining and griping and complaining and crying and all this kind of stuff, just shut up. Get with the program. Try to fix the situation, and quit just whining about how I've got to go through 3 different distributors now. Oh, well, boo-hoo.
It demonstrated that the whole system was essentially a house of cards.
Yeah.
And it was a stress test that was failed miserably. And you can take lessons from failures. And the industry doesn't seem to like taking... Entertainment in general has never really been good at taking lessons from failures. They often take the lesson that they want to take out of it rather than the lesson that the failure actually tells anybody with 2 firing neurons. And they take the wrong lessons from it. I mean, how long did we have to hear about the Catwoman movie failure, saying, well, nobody wants to go see female-led action movies, and we're sitting there going, we have an entire history of good movies. It's about good movies, not bad movies.
Yep.
And now the industry needs to look at this as an opportunity to learn lessons, and one of which is that just one company in the supply chain for the direct market is going to cause problems. One problem at one location, and they are totally fucked. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I'm sorry. It's a little bit more difficult for retailers. Sometimes they have to use, but now they have some choice in who they're going to deal with. Mm-hmm. Is that ideal? No. I mean, is it easier to just have one-stop shopping for everything? Sure. There's a reason why Amazon's so successful in that regard. But at the same time, if Amazon only had 4 warehouses, like across the country, how would they pass a stress test? They wouldn't. It's because they're so spread out. Okay.
Well, the book community, the book selling community at large had the same issue back in 2008, and they were basically getting their books from one warehouse location, strategic, per area, and that's where they got it from. They got all their books, they got their their comics trades, all that kind of stuff from one location, and when they had the problem during the recession, and that warehouse, that distribution model started having a lot of problems, they had to branch out and go to a lot more distributors. And now I'm talking about the book, I'm not talking about comic books, but the general book market now has a more robust distribution model, which comics should have done a long time ago.
Yeah.
But they were forced to do that because Llewellyn and their conglomerate group just couldn't do it anymore, and they couldn't handle the fact that people couldn't make their payments. Everything was going downhill. Different bookstores were closing en masse, and you had it was chaos until they picked up the multi-distribution. And we should have, people should have seen this coming. Some comic.
Haley, I got to break in here. We
ahead.
do have a super chat from Josh. Glad I found have you guys to listen to while plugging away at my thesis on a Saturday morning, wrapping up chapter 2. Thanks, guys. Yes, Josh is doing his thesis. He's doing a lot of work with Dick Grayson and Batman. He's going to be on the channel very soon, and we're going to be talking about the psychology of Batman. It's going to be a can't-miss video. If you're new to the channel and you're first seeing it for the first time today, please consider subscribing. If you're enjoying this conversation, please give us a thumbs up. We would very much appreciate it. And we do have another super chat. This one from Kenneth Dowling. Thank you so much. A $20 super chat. Beyond great. Generous on your part. I watched the AT&T DC video last night with Wes and Perch. Enjoy how you both break down analytics. Disney should have diversified itself instead of relying on crowd entertainment, including Disney Plus having way more content. So the interesting thing about that is Disney and probably all the investors thought they were diversified, but Perch, like we discussed, it turned out that when your eggs are all in the entertainment basket where you have to have crowds together, you're kind of vulnerable to something happening.
Yeah, I mean, so they did both companies have done in many cases the right moves in diversifying their business. They absolutely did. It's just, I think, like you said, nobody expected that the ability for people to move, the ability for people to gather, the ability for kind of group events, which cuts at the heart of all types of their business, was going to simultaneously get hit like this. I mean, it was a surprise to them. And you can argue maybe it shouldn't have been. We've had warnings about pandemics before, but and like we said in the video, they rushed in a lot of cases to get Disney Plus out because they saw the threat of Amazon and Netflix, and they're right about that threat. It's just the things. These kind of missteps from Disney, I think, are bad luck to some extent. I mean, I think there's a lot of deliberate missteps they've made that have been terrible, and then I think there's some other things that have been just they got hit on the wrong end of things. But it's interesting to watch this play out, and definitely it's these next 4 weeks we're seeing people hand DC and some of these other companies where comics are concerned an opportunity on a silver platter. If DC can't grab it and make great things out of this, then I think we go back to videos saying, is the comic industry just inherently screwed? Because if they can't take advantage of this opportunity, then the question becomes, how's anybody ever truly win?
Mm-hmm.
So Paley, I've been seeing some chatter where people are saying that because of the AT&T's restructuring, they're trying to cut $6 billion. That DC is dead. Is that what have you heard that? Is that what you've heard from your sources?
No, I've not heard DC is dead, but I have heard that there's going to be some changes. I don't know if they're going to sell off the comics end and keep the movie rights and TV rights and whatnot, but I don't know if they're going to sell off publishing.
I still don't see any buyer out there.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, I don't see anybody that's got the pockets for that right now. And I mean, I'd like to pull together a conglomeration of people and buy it, but I don't have the money for that, and I don't think that I could do it in this climate. So, it's just I don't see anybody that's going to be able to step forward and buy the publishing rights right now, and not for what they would want, and so. Yeah, maybe something that they wish they could do, but probably not going to be able to. So,
well, we can get Brian Ball.
the Rad team are going to buy out DC Comics. It's what we all wanted.
Hell yeah!
Kenneth Dowling, thank you so much for your very generous support of the channel. Thank you very much. So there is a very good point in here from Larry Comics. I wonder if they're going to cut loose of a lot of accounts. Ton of people owe them money. Right here, he's talking about one of the dirty little secrets in the comic book industry. Hurts. There are a ton of retailers that owe Diamond a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that this is going to allow some restructuring to take place. I think, I don't know, it goes on different sides. I think there's some retailers owe some money. I think there's some suppliers that owe them money. I think there are some outstanding. There are definitely some outstandings here. So I do think that if Diamond's smart, they're going to go through and they're going to clean out part of their business. They are going to drop some dead accounts, and honestly, they should. There will be a definite howl that we'll see online if Diamond starts dropping retailers that are 3, 6, 9 months behind in payments, or definitely there's going to be some people complaining about that. But to be a sustainable business, you've got payment terms for a reason, and it doesn't help the industry to keep people afloat indefinitely. So I do think you're going to see some restructuring going on, and yeah, I mean, Diamond probably does need to look different coming out the end of this. I hear different stories, whether it's they're financially sound or not. I'm concerned. I don't think Diamond's on stable financial ground, but other people say they are. So I think that there's some deep concerns in there.
I'm wondering how those people got terms to begin with, because I think that I could get net 30 maybe if I wanted to, but I don't. I just pay on delivery like most people, and or I pay by credit card, by debit card or whatever, whatever method I need to that month. Depends on my rewards and stuff like that. But I just wonder how they got their net 60, 90, whatever terms. And I'd really like to find out, if it's just, a good old boys network or something like that associated with Diamond, because, that along the way might have been convenient, but I was never told about it. And it's interesting that I'm hearing about businesses that are, on net 90 terms, and they're hitting 160 and or 180 rather, and now they're in financial trouble. You think you haven't gotten a check gotten paid for 6 months, and you now think that there's trouble. Oh, that's really brilliant, Diamond. How did they let themselves get into this? What was their financial thinking, or was there any thinking at all? And there's a lot of fiscal irresponsibility, it seems like, on Diamond's part, and they've kind of let people ride for a lot longer than they should have, and no wonder that this caused such an incredible failure in the system. It's just shocking to me. I mean, have you heard anything about these extended terms and stuff like that, Perch?
No, I mean, different people have different deals to some extent. I said that too quickly. I mean, there are standard terms with Diamond, but people can call up the rep. They can negotiate. They can do things, and in many cases, if they're a longer time customer, there's accommodations made. I mean, there's always been the rules, and then there's how you break the rules. I think there's always things like that sit out there, but there are just quite a few outstanding threads. I don't think that, but keep in mind, I don't believe that, there's tens of millions of dollars sitting out there that's unclaimed. It's nothing like that. It's in fact, it's more, maybe less the money and more just, you've got these loose ends, from an operation standpoint. If you're Diamond, you're going to ship out to somebody, you've got a customer that's paying on time, you have another that's late. Do you start shorting the orders for the person who's late. You have to manage that, on a one-on-one basis. It creates then operational friction, and friction equals speed and time, and it all kind of goes down the line. So I think that you will see coming out of this all right, no, this is what's owed. You're in, you're out, and a little bit more stringency around that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do a lot of wholesaling. I've got a couple of wholesale customers that buy like lots, and I give them a good discount, and it actually turns out a little bit better than them from that they bought from Diamond themselves. And I've got 30 terms on them, and I've had one or two that have been late, and I'm just like, you can't get comics until you pay up, until you get up to date on your accounts payable. And I can see that that's not always easy to do. You might lose a customer, but at the same time, you just can't let people railroad you the whole time.
So, Perch, did you have anything else that you wanted to say about the DC's new distribution before we move on to their new digital strategy and talk a little bit about Marvel as well?
No, just there are some facts up there that you're seeing on your screen now. They are changing. Not changing. It's just we're getting more clarity on some of this stuff. So I would urge everyone to get the latest news, see how things are changed. Don't take anything at immediate face value. But here are the facts as we know them. And kind of like we referenced much earlier, a couple people, Bleeding Cool, definitely high on that list, absolutely put out false information. They were going with the story over and over, using very fishy wording that DC had dropped Diamond completely. That was absolutely not true. While at the same time they're patting themselves on the back saying they're the #1 source. So just be a little, use your mind, use your brain, be suspicious of the information you're getting. Things are usually not as dramatic as people let on, but this is the information as we know it.
I mean, it's been fairly common knowledge for a while amongst some people, and I've got to be careful about how I say this, among some people who believe that Rich Johnston is just a serial liar and he just kind of makes things up as he goes along. So bear anything he says.
He has a clickbait
huge
site.
Grain of thought. Huge
he
grain of
makes
salt.
Headlines for people to go and click on. It doesn't matter if they're true or not.
That's
and
exactly
before we wrap this up, I do want to mention what Larry is saying here. He was a net 7, but went $100,000 in debt. Mr. Jeppy, the owner of Diamond Comic Distributors, financed him with interest, and he's paid in full. So there is, I know the Jeppy family and that business get a lot of flack because of, Diamond being a monopoly. Marvel had a lot to do with that, and there was a lot of missteps within the industry, but he and his family have done a lot for the industry, and they have gotten a lot of retailers through hard times by financing them themselves. And like I said, there's a lot of people that actually owe them money right now. So just another perspective on Mr. Jeppy and his family. They might not be exactly what you think they are, but it is time. We're going to move on and start talking about the new digital strategy that DC is doing. So they started these, digital first comics. They've kind of already had these before, but they're basically pulling out the new material from the DC giants, and they're releasing them as daily DC digital first. I see a lot of people aren't very happy about this. They think that DC is trying to move away from the physical market, move away from the direct retail market, and go to digital only. I think that they're just trying to get new content out there so their readers have something to come back for, and they don't lose that addiction as Perch and Todd McFarlane have been calling it. How did you see that one, Perch?
I think so. Maybe this is a little projection on my part. I think that digital and these different strategies, like we have been talking about, are things that people have needed to figure out, and they've been delaying or postponing, and just the money necessarily hasn't been there. So it's been easy to say, well, we'll worry about that later. And now here they are kind of behind the 8 ball, and they're needing to get things kickstarted again. DC is quickly trying to kind of resurrect their, everyday digital first initiatives, get some marketing, get some push out there. And it's absolutely smart that they're doing so. Like the comment that you said that Larry's putting here, and we've said before, more eyes on comics is good for the industry. The people who are howling about digital is going to somehow cannibalize a comic shop are nuts. There's no science, there's no proof behind that. Trust the science, as they say. There's no numbers that say that's true. And in fact, the opposite, time and time again. But even in the last week, as people are the usual suspects who are complaining to Bleeding Cool, which maybe answers some of those earlier questions about who's saying what, the usual retailers going, they're still complaining about the Walmart books, which at this point is you're out of your mind if you're complaining about that. It helped business. We have numbers that show it helped business. More comic shops. You're absolutely nuts if you're still grinding that axe. But people do it.
And we do have a super chat from Brian Ball from the Rags team. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Digital should be 99 cents to $1. That's a razor thin margin you got there, Brian. Floppy should be 30 to 50 pages with no more than 2 ads regulated to the back of the books. All right, so I'm on board with the other than the ads. I think if you get the readership up enough, the ads actually make the books cheaper. Pele, what do you think about Brian's suggestions here? I think digital should be 99 cents.
Ideally, yes. I think that actually digital could even go to a subscription model and have a current subscription model from Marvel for $15 a month, and it's buffet. You can read all except for maybe a few titles, like some of the Black Label or something DC has, or something that that is special or something wouldn't be included in that. But of their regular ongoing series, you can read all you want. I think that would be extremely popular, and it would be very advantageous for comic shops for people that still want the physical copies. There wouldn't be as much of a war between digital copies and physical copies if one was the buffet model and the other one was individual portion. And I think that's what they need to look into. It'd be costing like 3 or 4 comics a month, and you just get to read what you want. And for say $20, you could read what you want, and you get all the back issue catalog. That's fantastic. Who wouldn't want to do that for $20 if you love comics? That would be amazing. And people need to, that's what they really need to be looking at right now. And that's ongoing profit. That would be amazing in this market right now. And why they haven't done it is completely beyond me. But yeah, so I don't know if 99 cents per comic, maybe have that as like an alternative to that. If somebody just wants a single issue here or there, they could pay $1.50 or something like that. But I think that I think the subscription model is what they need to go to. And just like Netflix and the rest, there's a reason why that HBO Max and those and Disney Plus are just clamoring for it, because it's residual income month and month and month after month. It's something they can rely on. So that's my take anyway. I think the subscription model would be a better fit. But
thank you very much for supporting the channel, Brian. I really appreciate that. So Larry is saying, I've never had a customer find me via the Walmart deal, well, as I've had dozens yearly that find us as a result of digital. I'm with you, man. I have bought a lot of trades because I read them on digital. There was a big sale on Comixology, and I read it there, and I was like, this is amazing. Let me go get the physical one, and I want the next 2 volumes because I know I'm going to enjoy them. I used to be opposed, but now saw the benefits firsthand. And like we're seeing the digital first comics come out. I especially like the Robert Venditti Superman, which I'd already read because I did have that Superman Giant, but it was nice reading it again. Corbin, are you taking advantage of these new DC digital first? Have you read that Batman yet?
Yeah, no, I've been all over it. In fact, I was listening when you talk about when it was mentioned about the subscription model. I was like, yeah, much like a Marvel Unlimited or the Comixology, where you take that for the new current comics, because it's giving me an opportunity to really, at least over the last couple of weeks, dig back on stories that I haven't read, reread stories. And you're right, if you like it that much, I'm definitely going to go to my LCS or to a store and get the physical copy. So yeah, I'm more of a physical reader than a digital one, but I understand the value there. And if they're easily accessible and I can check that out and get my reading that way, I'm not turned off, oh, I've read it, I'm good. Especially as a comic book fan, I'm going to go and get the physical edition. So I definitely agree with you. Have it like a Comixology type deal where you can read a set amount of hundreds of titles, and then you pay to buy extra. There's certain like Black Label, like you mentioned, or not you that was out of it, and you can kind of get that after. That idea sounds really good to me, because then you have that chance to really get a little bit of everything. And like you all mentioned, as far as a taste of something where okay, I read this, I like it, now I'm going to go. It's not taking away. I mean, I'm not a business side, that's why I really enjoyed listening to just everyone's perspective here, but it's not, from my perspective, taking away my love of the physical copy. It's just me getting a chance to access it through this medium and then further go and pursue it through my own favored medium. So, or my own favorite platform, I should say. So I'm totally with that. And I really wish they would go more to that, especially with the current new ones. But I'm not at all upset because I have been able to catch up on not only classic storylines, but even stuff that I missed that went through the cracks this past year, you know, a couple months ago. And then go, wow, you know, that was an underrated, I'm going to say one that I actually don't like, but an underrated Spider-Man run the last 4 months. Now I'm going to go and, you know, dig back in some back issues as soon as I can. Or maybe see if there's a trade payback or something out there. But it gives you a chance to catch them on these books that have slipped through the cracks or weren't, you know, critically acclaimed per se, but were really solid books that, you know, we don't have our fingers on all of it, at least from a customer's perspective.
Absolutely, the market is saturated with low quality, mediocre books, and a lot of the good stuff does fall through the crack. Ash, I see that you have a hot take when it comes to digital. Tell us how it's going to kill the comic book industry.
I don't necessarily think it's going to kill the comic book industry, but I think it might kill the way we look at it. Just because if you take every other entertainment media pretty much that's out there, you know, have adopted digital, and, you know, most of them more easily because some of them are just digital based anyway, like video games, movies, music. But what's happening, you're starting to see, look, like even books, it's killing the ancillary industries, which are the retail outlets that move this product, and it's just moving it either to direct from the seller, you know, or the creator, or it's going to like a giant mega corporate hub that distributes it. Comics, though, the thing about comics that it doesn't translate well is because, like, I'm cool like having all my music on my hard drive. I don't need it to be on a disc. I'm like really cool that I can plug my phone into my car and my music's there. I don't need to put a CD in the disc slot. I'm really cool that I can pop up my TV and all my music, all my movies are digital, and I have to worry about getting up and going to the Blu-ray player. That all works. But comics aren't just a medium. Now, for some people it is. Some people just want to read the story and that's it. That are totally cool. But this industry is built up by collectors, people that want to buy the physical books and own them and collect them. Now, not everyone is a speculator and wants to have, you know, huge values out of their product, you know, their purchases. But a lot of them, myself included, take pride in like, oh, I got this whole run of, you know, X-Men, and, you know, I don't care how much it's worth. It means something to me. And, you know, it's like baseball cards can never go digital. Stamps collecting can never go digital. Comics sort of can, because there are people that will be interested in reading it digitally, but a large part, the reason why it is what it is because of that collectability nature. And if you remove that, they'll survive. It'll still be around. I mean, we see web comics and it's there, but it'll just be this smaller little thing, in my opinion. And it'll become even more niche than it already is. And the challenge that I see comics having with people, you know, bringing up some of the problems like, well, I'm not going to pay $4 for a digital comic. And rightly so. I'm right there with you. That's silly. However, I understand why that book's $4, because, you know, Pele at his shop, it doesn't make sense for Pele to try to sell his customers a $4 book when they can go on Comixology and get it for 99 cents. If you're just a reader, if you're that customer who's like, I don't even care about owning the physical copy, I just buy them for the stories and I throw them away. Well, all of a sudden now there's no reason for that guy to go to Pele's shop and buy the book, because he's getting a way better deal digitally. And that's the same thing for me. Like, I don't go to Best Buy anymore and buy Blu-rays. I get them on digital, and I wait till I get a sale. No,
it's a different type of customer, though.
It is.
I would argue that those are people that probably wouldn't be at my shop to buy comics anyway, because they want the physical experience.
Sure, and your shop is obviously, from what I talked to you, feels like it's much harder collector base. But a lot of shops, especially out here in the West Coast, they're not the hardcore
Yeah,
old school
that's true.
collector shops. They're more of the like, hey, we're in a mall and we got comics and get your pops and your paraphernalia, and they do try to cater more to that walk-in audience. And I see a lot of people going, why would I pay $4 for this when I can just pop it up on my phone or my tablet and hit a button and I have it for 99 cents? It would undermine the shops, and you would be a tug of war back and forth.
That's why I was talking about the subscription model. I think that would be a point of entry.
I do, and I think the subscription model has a place, and I think, Marvel Unlimited, I point to people all the time, like, that's a good value. But if they started doing it for new comics, that would crush. I don't know. I just think the comics are in a weird place that they can't just shift gears the way other entertainment mediums have and say, you know what, just forget it. We're going to go all digital, and and all the shops go away. And that's another thing too. Like, shops, I think a lot of customers like going to the comic book shop. They like seeing other comic fans. They like talking to the owner and the staff at the shop, and they like talking comics. That's why there's things like comic conventions, like, because people like being around that community. And when it just goes completely digital and all the shops go away, there's that sense of community really goes away. And I feel like you lose a massive part of your market. And comics are already on such a small market that it is, they can't really afford. You can't, if you only lost 50% of your customers, I think that would be generous. That would crush comics. You couldn't afford to pay for the writers and the artists and do all that. Like, it would just, I think everything is at it's almost not a breaking point, but it's contracted to about as small as it can really get and still be kind of a profitable industry. And I think they need to find a way to make digital work and enhance the physical, and not try to say, like, shift over to digital. That's my thinking.
Well,
I think, hold on. I think Larry had a good point. He says that digital should be the spinner rack for the next generation. I think he's onto something. The digital comic should be the entry point where you finally read that story that gets you into the comic shop. Perch, does digital have to end physical, or can they coexist together and even enhance each other?
No, absolutely. They're not. I mean, and that's one of the big myths. Digital and physical are not enemies, and if you do them right, they're wonderfully complementary. And I think there's a lot of ways you can do it, but it really highlights the lack of creative thinking where this is concerned. Imagine if you could get a lower resolution, black and white, simple digital version, quick and easy for even titles you might love. People will still want to go buy it physically and see it in color. That's one way to do it. You can do director commentary. You can do kind of writer markup of pages and comics. There's a million ways that the two go hand in hand together. It's not one or the other. And to Larry's comment here, people who buy these comics often, the collectors anyway, want to put them in bags, put them on the shelves, keep them preserved. They don't want to sit there and read them and go back and read them. That's what digital is perfect for. So there's a million different ways you can make this work. Digital can be a little bit of revenue, or maybe a lot of revenue if you do it right, but certainly a ton of marketing.
I'll tell you what. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No.
I really liked this idea that was percolating for like 24 hours, and then it turned out to be like total misinformation. But with the whole Comic Hub thing, I liked the idea of finding a way to buy my comic digitally and then get like a voucher to like pick up the physical copy in the store. I would totally go buy a $4. I'd pay my $4 for my digital comic and then go to the store and pick it up. I mean, that's how I buy my music right now. If I buy a CD off of Amazon, I buy the CD and they send me the digital copy immediately. And then a couple days later, the CD comes in the mail, but they give both. If the industry could find a way to do that, to say, hey, every digital you buy $4 for a comic, we have an account with, participating store, and that money, you go pick up. So if they could find a way to do that, I would be down. But
yeah, they've done that the reverse way, of course, for a long time, with the Marvel and their digital codes. But I think that they kind of need to reverse the order on that.
Yeah, because of the collectability. I don't want to rip that code off. I don't want to mess my comic up.
Exactly the
I
same
mean,
thing.
there is the issue with that, and my store manager Mike is here, by the way. Everybody say hi to Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Hello, Mike. What's up, buddy?
He's Dingleberry.
Hey,
But
Mike.
He's bringing the point here that it almost seems like Marvel doesn't know what to do, and they are completely, they don't. Some of them probably want to go digital. Some people want to go physical, and the reason why we haven't heard a response, if I'm understanding what he's saying, the reason why we haven't heard a response is because they don't have a response ready yet. They're still wondering what they're going to do about this. So going forward, I think he's got a point. I think that there's still a lot of conflict within Marvel and within Disney of how they're going to handle this in the long term.
So I did want to say something good about Marvel and all this, and that I think they actually did better than DC. So DC started this new DC Essentials where they're basically giving away the first issue of classic story runs like Watchmen, Hush. I think Mr. Miracle's in there. There's a bunch of them. Whereas Marvel went, and with their Marvel Unlimited app, if you download it, you don't have to get a login. You don't have to give any of your finance information, but you can get access to entire runs of Avengers vs. X-Men, entire run of Civil War, the entire story arc of Donny Cates' Thanos Wins. And they put out full runs, full story arcs of really good stories. And in that way, I think Marvel kind of paints DC and even did it better than them. Doc, did you have a chance to look at that? What did you think of that?
You know what? I saw that it exists. I despise digital. I'm one of those people, I can't bring myself to reading a digital freaking comic. I hate it. I hate the form factor. I hate the size. I hate the way I have to interact with it. I hate everything about.
What if you knew somebody that was interested in digital?
I would.
Don't you think sending them to the Marvel
this
app, getting a full story, is better than DC's plan to give them issue number one?
Yes, absolutely. Because now I've never quite understood the appeal of Civil War, but apparently it's popular with enough people. So I don't think it's necessarily the best representation of what they could be putting on that app, but it's also one of the few. I guess it's probably one of the best modern stories that they could have stuck on there. But so I absolutely, as I said, as somebody that despises digital, I still do recommend this. It's a great entry point. It's a way to get non-readers and potentially convert them into readers. And I think that's one of the big opportunities that a lot of the companies need to take advantage of at this time.
Ash, I know you read digital comics. Did you download Marvel and read some of those classics that maybe you missed out while you were away from the hobby?
Yes and no. I was going to add on to your thing. It's not just on the Marvel app. You can also go to Comixology, and all of those same books that Wes is talking about are available. And that's the way I would recommend it, because it's not just for a limited time to read it whenever Marvel decides to pull the plug on it. It's Comixology, you can download them and whatever, and you'll just have them forever. Well, I guess until Comixology goes bust, but you know what I'm saying. Eventually, virtually forever. And it's 10 total trade paperbacks. Some of them are really good quality things too, like the Dark Phoenix Saga, the Brubaker Captain America is one of them. I don't remember all of them, but I counted 4 out of the 10. I was like, these are really solid, and then the other 6 are going to be hit or miss depending on your taste. But there's free. I got all of them because I was like, I'll check it out. I don't care. It's Captain Marvel. I would never buy this, but it's free. Now I'll check it out. But to counter a little bit with the DC, I do think Marvel trumped them a little bit with, offering full trades, but DC offered a lot more number ones. I went through and got like 30 number one comics. So you get less overall like story, but you get a wider variety of like DC's base. So if you went through and you could check out a ton of different books and find the one that's more for you, versus like you get full trades but you only get 10. So it really has to do with how you look at things. But yeah, both of them, Comixology, the DC app, the Marvel app, check them out. I check them almost daily. I try to tweet them out. I put them on Wes's Discord if I can, just to share deals, because I love sharing deals. I love everyone to find great deals and find more comics. And I love digital. I'm actually a big proponent of digital for a reading format, but I buy the comics physically. Like, I'm a collector, so I like owning them, but I love reading them on my iPad. So I'm definitely not one of those people who's in that position of like, oh, screw digital, like, and that's, you know, I'm not nogging anyone that does, but I just want you to hear, if anyone's listening to me, I don't have a bias against the format, so per se. I just feel like some of the marketing and the way that they want to sell it and how they're going to do it, it's tricky.
So, Perch, we've discussed DC not having a comprehensive digital plan. It seems like they do have one now. DC Digital First, where they're putting some of those materials. And I'll be honest, I'm not loving all of them, but there's a couple of good stories in there so far. And they have these DC Essentials. Is this the beginning of DC moving forward with digital, and with the idea that will be their backup next time if something like this ever happens again?
I think so in many cases, this feels like a restart. They had a digital first program. It was reasonably successful. I mean, their Injustice line and other things made them a lot of money and worked for them on digital. They had certainly a more successful digital first strategy than others have. I think they kind of lost their way a little bit with that, or they let it wither a bit, and now they're coming back to it, and they're getting that restart and getting that back up to strength again. I don't agree that DC is looking at this as a jettison of the print business, or I mean, to me, it feels like a logical strategy of running both parts of their business, and as a conduit maybe between some of Warner Entertainment and those services and the comics. I think they're just looking at this as a business to build. I think it will take a lot of time. I don't think it's a backup plan if this happens again, but I do think it's all just how you build your brand. And once again, I would suspect there's some people at DC right now who are sitting in a room or on a meeting or on a Zoom call from their homes, wherever they are, and they're going, hey, Marvel seems to sleep at the wheel. Let's work the extra hours. Let's work the weekend. Let's have the calls at night. I've had a lot of conversations with people at DC on Sundays and just weird times from usual, where they're hustling, trying to get all these different types of their business moving now. They see an opportunity, they're taking it. And that's what this feels like.
Mm-hmm. Good point there. So let's. I do have a $10 super chat from Kenneth Dowling. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, Kenneth. I've recently been buying old Spidey comics. Amazing Spider-Man 275 and 276. Spider-Man fights Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin has become one of my favorite Spidey villains. I find him far more interesting than Green Goblin. All right, Doc, put him in his place.
No, I agree with him. I really do. I maybe it's the past decade or so of the way that Norman, actually probably all the way back to the Clone Saga, with turning Norman into this Batman-like, but villainous, he planned contingency man thing, where everything bad that happens in Peter Parker's life is somehow connected back to Norman Osborn, and it kind of made me start hating Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin by default. Whereas the Hobgoblin was always much more of he was a wild card.
I think that Ned Leeds is a more interesting character anyway than Norman Osborn. That's my personal opinion. He seems to be a more complicated villain. He seems to be a little bit more, I don't know if you'd say crazier, but he just seems like a more well-rounded villain than the way they portrayed Osborn.
When they turned Norman into Lex Luthor meets Batman meets the Joker, is when I'm like, you know what, I'm tapping out on the Green Goblin.
I'm out, boys. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they kind of did. But Ned Leeds, or any of the Hobgoblins, really. I mean, there's always a little bit more of a mystery as to which Hobgoblin you're getting this time. And he was much more brutal and psychotic, but but he didn't really have a plan. He didn't have like this giant overarching screw with Spider-Man plan. He just wanted to F stuff up.
Yeah. I think I'm one of those people that think that Norman should have just stayed dead way, way long ago. And I always, as if my Spider-Man fandom was more attached to the son, Harry Osborn taking up the Green Goblin, and the dynamic of being Peter Parker's friend, but that story's kind of played out. You can't really continue that anymore. So I think both of those should just stay what they were. I wish Marvel would have just let both of those sagas kind of just rest and let the Hobgoblin sort of be the goblin, the perennial evergreen goblin going forward. Like just we had the original guy, and then those two epic storylines, and now Hobgoblin.
Who else during this Spider-Man reboot with the Homecoming and stuff like that? They introduced the kind of portly, Polynesian gentleman to be Ned Leeds, and I'm like, he's going to be the Hobgoblin? Holy shit! That's the first thing I was thinking.
Intimidating. Think about that
like,
guy.
Oh my god, this guy's going to be the Hobgoblin? I was like, man, that's going to be really nasty when that happens.
Well, hopefully it doesn't happen. He's the best character in the whole movie.
Oh,
Kenneth
yeah,
Allen,
but it's that dynamic. It's like, what if he's still acting like the old Ned, but he's still fighting the Hobgoblin? He turns out to be schizophrenic or something. That could be interesting.
Can we just get Tommy Lee Jones in to play Norman Osborn and just?
Oh wow!
That's true. So I do want to say thank you very much to Kenneth Allen for supporting the channel. It's very generous of you, very much appreciated. And I want to say to Atomic Hound, I'm very jealous. If I found a box full of Valiant Deluxe editions with Vendetti's Exo Man of War, I would be over the moon. I would probably be reading them every day to my boys, and I would very much enjoy that. So one of the last things that we need to really talk about is we are starting to see smaller publishers abandon Diamond somewhat. Alterna Comics has already announced that they are no longer a Diamond publisher. They're finding their own means of distribution. Scout Comics has also announced that they are also finding their own means of distribution. They're banning the Diamond model. Pele, did you see this coming?
Yeah, because they've got to do something. I'm surprised that some of the smaller publishers just haven't hopped on to Alterna, and using Alterna's, network to try to distribute. But that's kind of what I would look at. I'd look at who's successful right now as far as smaller publishers and how are they doing it. And
yeah, but
kind of
Alterna's
with them.
like their distribution is so much smaller than
even
a lot of the smaller publishers.
Right, but I'm talking about even small, publishers that are like Alterna's size, that are, maybe try to partner with them or something. But they have to do something. Otherwise they're just dead. So I mean, you've got the new distribution links now, but that's going to be a little bit rocky going from the start. So I think it's one of those things that they just don't want to get caught with all their eggs in one basket again. So it makes sense. I understand it.
That they see the writings on the wall, that they're being kind of put on the back burner. Perch, you already talked about this a little bit, that some of these smaller publishers might not have a seat at the table for Diamond distributing comics for months after they come back online.
Yeah, they're not. The reality is it's going to take, they're not given a lot of certainty of their business. They do not have the cash reserve. They're trying to, in some cases, bootstrap themselves or use their own money to get going. So if you're a small publisher, you don't have the mechanism to do this right now. You have to look for something else. And so I think, and you look at Alterna, Peter's had a rocky relationship with Diamond for a long time. And I think he's been on the cusp of getting dropped by them before. So I think if you're him, you go, all right, I'm either going to just hope that they never make good on that threat, or I'm going to take matters into my own hands and chart my own future. If you're a businessman, that you care about your business, you're gonna do that. And I think you'll see a lot of small publishers, and rightly so. Arguably, not necessarily Peter, but in general, a lot of small publishers have not done this before. They have not set up the infrastructure maybe that they need, and they're not ready for Diamond, Midtown, DCBS, any of them. They haven't put enough operational things in place. Again, Peter's kind of a different story. He has been doing this for a while, but a lot of small guys got in there. They weren't terribly ready to do it, and it wasn't good for them, and it wasn't good for Diamond in terms of just operationally being ready to do that business. So if the idea now is that they're going to go off and they're going to create the channel themselves, maybe learn a few things along the way, smooth out the bumps, build that customer base. Yeah, that's smart. That's what they should be doing. And that's where the business is at right now.
So, Doc, do you see more small publishers, maybe even somebody, some of the bigger small publishers, like maybe a Valiant, in a single month, they might ship 22,000 comics at this point, maybe a little bit more with reprints, but it's not that much. Do you see them maybe even trying to find another place, another avenue where they're not beholden to Diamond and the infrastructure that's more in line, that's kind of more there for Marvel, DC, and Image's needs?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to have a choice in the matter. I think you're going to see after this, you are going to see, at least with Diamond, they used to have, and I think they still technically do have a, minimum order distribution number. And I think you're going to start seeing that actually enforced again. So a lot of these small publishers, companies like, Humanoids, their H1 stuff, Lion Forge, Oni, you're going to see a lot of those companies essentially getting almost, if not completely, dropped because they can't meet the minimum order distribution. You might even see some Marvel books that can't meet the minimum distribution numbers.
There's a couple of them that are under 5,000.
Yeah,
in the new ones.
Yeah, and so you're going to see they're going to have to seek alternative means. Now, maybe it is all banding together to put together their own something, alternative. Maybe it's hiring essentially a fulfillment company to handle it for them and kind of function as a distributor. Maybe they go with places like, Lunar and UCS. I don't know. But I think you're going to inevitably see some sort of a realignment in that regard. And it's a good opportunity. They're going to need to start looking at it as, Marvel and DC, and as a result, Diamond won't end up, because Marvel and DC's numbers kind of subsidize a lot of these small press almost from being able to be published or being able to be distributed through Diamond, because it doesn't matter as much that they're not really bringing in any money to Diamond. So they're going to have to really, you're going to see a lot of contraction along the small press market, and you're going to end up seeing a lot of consolidation.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think you're going to see a lot of consolidation. You're going to see a lot of these smaller companies like Antarctic and Scout and some of those like that are going to say, hey, we're stronger together, so let's kind of join forces here, and maybe not integrate together, but kind of like form their own broader umbrella, like say the Independent Comics Alliance or something like that. That would be amazing. If you had all those smaller companies like that kind of unified to give themselves a stronger stance going forward. Like kind of like almost unionizing all the smaller companies together to make themselves like the size of an Image or something like that. That would be fantastic, and I think that would be something that would benefit customers, readers, and the shop owners, because they'd have, I'm not say a single point of access, because that's kind of what we had the problem with before, but a better point of access for all those smaller publishers.
I think the problem is going to come into fulfillment, really. I think right now, of course, everyone's like, a point that I don't often hear being made about like the whole DC thing. I didn't get a chance to chime in early on that, but is these companies have to do these things, whether LCS is like it or not. It's the obligation of these businesses to look after their own welfare, and they don't know if Diamond's going to come back. I mean, you can throw your chips on red or black, and you're like, I don't know which, like maybe they will, maybe they won't. But regardless, no one actually knows the future. So if you're a business, you should probably be looking to hedge your bets and say, well, let's have an alternative like DC's doing and these independents. Sounds like a good idea, but ultimately it's going to come down to the cost of fulfillment, and shipping to 2,000 plus stores across the country weekly is not something that you can just boom, snap your fingers and get it going. That's rough. And that's why no one really wants to step in and do what Diamond's really doing. And even if they put their minds together, all these little publishers got together and said, hey, let's band and let's form. Well, the only way I could see that really happening in actuality is they still have to put out the cash to hire people and create some sort of physical fulfillment center, some sort of warehouse. Essentially, you're becoming a mini little Diamond, and then that all costs money. And if Diamond's willing to say, hey, we're all here, just ship it, have the printer ship it to us, we'll take care of it, and it costs you much less. I eventually foresee everyone just going, yeah, that's much less of a headache. Even though it's a big risk, it's whatever. Like,
which is largely what they'll do. I think. I mean, there's a bunch of this has been talked about. I mean, honestly, since the late '80s, I would say. I mean, this is always a topic of kind of one. Why don't the smaller publishers just band together and work economies of scale as one? And the answer is, well, the economies of scale are still not enough for a lot of these small companies to make it. Like Ash is saying. But the other problem is this industry is filled with people with typically big egos who want to control. And so the idea of getting 3 or 4 of these in one room together where they're going to cooperate and actually work in each other's best interest is often way easier said than done. And that may be sad to say, but it's reality. People don't tend to get along. A lot of people get into comics because it is a more isolated, it's a more you can run your own show. As we've seen, that people are not necessarily the best at getting at coexisting. And I think as you see with Brian and others, if you just manage your own business, you can get things, you can make it work. It's just it does require some personal business effort, and it requires anyway. There's a lot going on here.
Well, let's be honest. Most of the people, I think Brian is a very big exception to this, as well as Tim Lim and Doug Ernst and a couple other people. There's a lot of people in the comics industry that severely lack business sense. They're creative as all hell, but they wouldn't know how to run a business if their life depended on it, and or even anything to do with really the money side of it. Or they want to sit at their table, write their script or draw their pages, hand it to somebody else, and move on to the next pages. They don't want to put in the work that people like Brian are willing to do. So, and additionally, one of the things that you'd end up seeing, if you ended up with a lot of those companies kind of together, is a lot of most of these people hire their friends. They hire their friends. They hire flunkies. There's a lot of redundancy that would need to be eliminated in order for it to be a viable, business on an economy of scale. And that require them firing their friends, and they don't want to do that. So they're not going to.
That's a great point.
All right, guys.
Yeah, great point.
So we're going to start wrapping things up, and we covered a lot of the people that have stepped up the plate and done good things, maybe some people that haven't done great things. Ash, is there somebody that during this COVID-19 coronavirus crisis that has affected everything, but specifically dealing with the comic book industry, have you seen someone that has stepped up that you've been impressed with, or have you seen someone that you thought might have stepped up but they haven't done anything, and you're wondering where they are?
The obvious ones have already really been talked about.
All right, 2 minutes or less.
Okay, thank you. DC was the one that stepped up and surprising me what they're doing with all coming up and being proactive and communicating that, hey, we got these solutions, or we're going to be trying to do these digitals, and they're constantly being vocal and reminding not just retailers and industry, but also fans, hey, we're not dead. We got things in motion. We got some comics coming out, and not making you think like they're gone and dead. Meanwhile, Marvel, who I would expect the most, especially with DC's floundering right now, or sorry, Disney's floundering right now, they're just deathly silent. And I know all these things have been said already, and I'm just answering the question, but those are the big ones. It's the obvious ones, and that's really the most important, to be honest, in my opinion.
I'm kind of wondering where Image is. Where's Image? Where are you guys?
Well,
What's going on?
Stevenson was out on the front lines. He was out giving information before anyone, but they seem to have fallen off a little bit.
Yeah, they have.
Corbin, have you seen anyone that you thought was impressive that we haven't talked about yet? 2 minutes or less, somebody that you're like, wow, they really did something cool, or another person that you're like, wait, where are you?
Well, like in the industry, I mean, obviously we talked about the big ones, DC, Marvel, Image. I think on like maybe a personal level, I think how the shops have adapted has been interesting to see. Following on social media, having friends who own shops and talking to them and kind of seeing how they've adapted, and whether that is, curbside pickup or reservation orders, or trying to make the focus more of the customer and finding books. Okay, we're not having new books to sell, but we're going to make reading lists for you, as a customer to come in and get from us. I think they've been the real MVPs on my part, because I am looking at more from that, obviously the customer perspective, going, okay, how am I still going to get my books? Obviously, I still want to support my local, my LCS and keep them going, and they still want to be around. So I think I've seen at least 3 or 4 examples of stores like modifying and changing the way they do things. Even, I'm in Arizona right now, and this is a stay-at-home thing, but how they're able to adapt not only for business, but also for the centric customer focus that, obviously they're trying to make money because that's what it's all about. But at the end of the day, also, it's keeping that interest and that engagement. And I've really enjoyed watching the stores at work and trying to get through that.
There are definitely some guys out there hustling their asses off to keep their businesses open and keep their customers full of comics. And we definitely have to give a tip of the hat to those guys. Thank you very much to Kenneth Dowling. Thanks, Wes, for the content. Take care, gentlemen. Be safe. Thanks for co-signing, Doc. You're the man. Man, Doc is not the man. Come on. If anyone's the man, it's Corbin. Look at that quarantine hair, man. It's gorgeous.
There you go. I appreciate the shout out there.
Yeah, no. Corbin's definitely the dude.
I'm about to say, Doc. I appreciate it.
All right, Paley. From a retailer perspective, is there anyone that's really caught your eye for a good or a bad reason that we haven't talked about here yet on the channel?
Not particularly. I mean, I'm really impressed that some shops have really stepped it up. The ones that I expected to come out, smelling like a rose in this have been nothing but a pile of crap. This is kind of like smoldering there in the corner, and they're not doing very well. While other smaller shops have tried to fix the situation and are trying to adapt to what's going on right now. And my hat's off to them. If you're a comic shop owner out there, and you're hustling and you're working and you're trying to get the customers what they want, and you're fighting for your business and for it to succeed, my hat's off to you. And I have nothing but respect. And if you are a comic shop owner and you want some help, and or if you need any advice, I'm not going to say that I have the answers for everything, but I can try to help. I can try to give you advice, and just let me know. You can contact me at just_Pele on Twitter. Same thing on Instagram, and we can try to work something out. I can see what we can do to get you up and running, the best you can right now in this situation.
Well, that was very generous of you. Definitely, if you need to take Pele up on his offer, he's giving it out there for a reason. He wants to help out, and he's got some great ideas. His shop is actually doing very well right now, and we're very glad for him. He's very blessed, and definitely very kind of you to offer your time out there. Doc, who is it that we haven't mentioned yet that maybe flew under the radar or was above the radar that we just didn't talk about yet that you want to say kudos to?
I think there's 3 people really that I've been really impressed with in the way that they're doing this. Rob Liefeld, we've already done a video on that, and
he's the man.
the way he's out there doing sketches, doing and selling them, with the sales going directly to individual comic shops that are nominated by his fans. It's not even people that, stores that have had him in there for promotion. It's just stores that, his fans want him to support. Peter Simeti, I love the way that he's, I know we talked about him a little bit, but the way he's trying to figure out a path forward, I think that's big and important. And Todd McFarlane, first of all, for taking a very active role in everything, plus his Spawn campaign, almost at $200 or almost at $2 million. He's taken a big lead as a vocal leader. And I think that a lot of people need to pay, Todd's not right on absolutely everything, but he's a guy that's made a shit ton of money in comic books and figured out how to parlay comic books into even more money elsewhere, but he's never left comic books. He's not one of those people that wanted to make comics just to get out of comics. He loves the art form, and he's doing everything he can to keep it viable. Actually, there is one more, and this isn't really, actually, you know what? Never mind. Screw it. No, that was it.
Screw it. We're doing it live here. Doc's done. Perch, you got to have somebody interesting. Are you going to bag on somebody? Are you going to praise somebody with this?
No, I think there's been some people. I mean, the one publisher we didn't mention was Boom. I think Boom's given some nice statements and has been pushing to clarify their stance and where they're going as a company. I think the video was largely feel good, kind of emotional, but still it was very nice. And I thought that was strong of them and a good example for a lot of the smaller publishers out there. We talked about it around the side, mainly for DC, but we should remember that Midtown Discount Comic Book Service also rose to the occasion. They put some spend out to make this happen on their end, so they deserve some credit as well. I mean, definitely a lot of retailers are worried about what they're going to do, but Midtown has cash reserves. They've got a stable business. They've got good mail order. They could have easily, more than 95% of the other comic shops, just ridden this thing out. But they're trying. Now, granted, they're doing it for self-interest. They're going to make some money out of this, but they didn't have to do it, and others have not. We had some questions earlier on about, well, there are some others. There are some other services like Discount Comic Book Service. Why weren't they part of it? Most of them passed, is why. That's the truth. So good for them. And then this gets beat up a lot, but the reality is a ton of creators, like them or hate them, have been very charitable with both their time and their money and their work. And whether or not the foundation that they're putting their money to distributes money, whatever, that's kind of beyond them. A lot of people, from Scott Snyder and Donny Cates and just along the lines, people love to bag on these guys. They shelled out a lot of their own time and cash and comics to do it. Cates often buying comics for people. So I think that there has been a kind of a really nice stepping up of a lot of the creators who take a big pounding on a regular basis of trying to help, like Rob Liefeld, like Minnie. Many have done quite a bit in this area, and so they deserve some praise there. And frankly, it's kind of embarrassing. I guess this will be the bag on part, that their parent companies like Marvel, you got a ton of Marvel creators donating time, charity, money, drawings, sketches, Zoom calls, etc., and the parent company is silent. It shouldn't be that way.
You don't even see them tweet out what they're doing.
Right? Yeah. Not even signal boosting.
I don't really want to bag on Bink, the people that are coordinating some of that. But come on, your operating costs are too high. Something's got to go. Something's got to be fixed with that.
And it does look like those operating costs that were originally put out is not necessarily accurate. But
I'd have to see that. I'd have to see proof of that. I'm just looking on the report.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do because I don't see it, it's not true. I think.
No, I'm just going by the actual tax reports, tax returns. So
yeah, 1 year. We saw 1 year. There's many years of tax returns. They have different numbers. We looked at one that was negative and said, oh, this is the way it is. You go back and look at the previous years, the following years, different numbers.
Yeah, it's 54%. So yeah, but still, I think they do need to work on that. I'm not going to bag on them. Like I said, I wasn't going to. I think that they're overall still doing a good thing, but they need to improve. They could do better.
Yeah, I think a lot of charities, United Way, Red Cross, others have
Absolutely,
way too high an operating
they're also United Way is terrible, but
but I do think it was pathetic for some of the people who quickly ran to do videos and talking about, this is a scam. No, this is charity. Now it's charity.
no, I didn't say it was a scam.
I'm not
I
saying
would
you. I'm not saying you. To be clear, not you, but a lot of people bagged on that, and they missed the point that a lot of the people feeding that we're digging in to help shops, and I appreciate that.
So I'm gonna shout out somebody you might not expect. I'm shouting out Donnie Good Guy. Donnie Cates, he's been down in Austin paying off people's pull list for comic shops, throwing some capital in there and getting people their comics, but also getting the comic shops that money, that back money that they've been owed anyway, and helping them get through those hard times. That is, yeoman's work. Good on you, Donnie. Good guy. My hat's off to you, and also my good friend right here, Comics by Perch. He has been doing a great job putting phenomenal videos out there. The best news that you're going to find on YouTube as far as comic book industry news. He's got a great take, great perspective. I really appreciate that he takes a little bit of time and throws some of those nuggets my way. We put them in here on the channel and make sure that information gets distributed as wide as possible. And he's a great friend, a great partner of the channel. And definitely, if you haven't been over at Comics by Perch, keeping up with everything, he's putting out 1, 2, sometimes 3 videos a day, and he's doing a great job. I think we're right up against the time, but I'm going to do one quick binging recommendation. If you haven't read up Ed Brubaker's Captain America, definitely go find that. You can get The Winter Soldier right now free on that Marvel Unlimited app. It's also free in Comixology if you have an account there. Corbin, what are you recommending for binging? Real fast.
I've been reading the Doug Mensch, Kelly Jones Batman run. So I've been really big on that. I've been obviously doing the classics. Batman Contagion that went across. It went through Azrael. It went through Robin. That whole storyline in the early, mid-90s. That's what I've been getting on. I'm trying to dig deeper. I'm going to be going to a friend of mine who owns a shop a couple of days to kind of grab some more runs and do some more of that. But that's what I've been into the last week and change. Also, we're going to talk about Batman Curse of Batman Curse of the White Knight. So I did read some more Batman work from Sean Murphy, the original the White Knight storyline, and that's been something else I've been into.
Absolutely. All right, Ash, what are you binging right now?
I'm doing 2 different things. If I might be able to plug myself, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So I've been doing this thing in the wake of the current events, where I do like a live reading streams, and they haven't been super popular. They're late at night. I call them like bedtime with Ash, and I've been reading 2 different comics, and I did the first 6 issues of
he's kind of
Gideon
grindy,
Falls.
folks. You might want to be careful at bedtime.
I did the first 6 issues of Gideon Falls, and then now I'm doing Birthright. And Birthright seems to be real popular. And then before, I do kind of what I call an opening act comic, where I pick something. So I did several issues of the Chris Claremont run, periodic issues, a little piecemeal, to give people a taste of what it used to be like. And we read a really terrible comic too. What if Deadpool had become Venom? One of the worst comics I've ever read in my life. And that was kind of fun too, just because it was so horrible. But I'm doing Birthright, which is fantastic, and I urge people to check that out. And also, I just want to plug a new comic, the DC Digital First. I went and bought the Venditti Superman. It's 99 cents. It was cool. It's fun. Good art. Good Superman story. And I also picked up the 2 Batmans. Haven't read those yet. And I'm reading them on my channel. So if you don't want to pay you should pay 99 cents. But check those out. I recommend them.
Hey, dude.
All right.
We should finish our Extinction Agenda thing.
Oh yeah, hit me up.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're wrapping this up. Pele, what are you recommending for binging real fast?
Okay, everybody's been. I don't know if everybody, but some people have been following. I've been reading ASM from first on up with through the floppies, and just past issue 200. It's fantastic. I've really enjoyed going back. Some of the comics I've not read since I was a little kid. And get on your Marvel Unlimited. I know that the floppies are god awful expensive, but great investments. But just get on there and join me in ASM reading, and it's been a lot of fun. I've had a good time with a lot of the shop customers, reading at the same time and talking it over. So yeah, just that's a great series to pick up on, very iconic, and really have enjoyed that. So that's what I'm recommending.
Awesome. All right, Perch, what are you recommending people binge right now while we're in the quarantine?
Well, I mean, this could be kind of a weird recommendation, but as some of you know, I'm currently going through and I'm doing reviews of all the Avengers #1 relaunches. So I'm basically going through and I'm setting on reading all of these issues, not just the #1s, because I want to talk about other things. And it's been interesting to see how the comics change decade to decade and some of the common themes that come up and how they look in hindsight. It's pretty amazing to go through. So I would recommend anybody, if you have some time, pick a title that has history of 3-4 decades and go back and just pick some of the starting runs with those, whether it's X-Men or Batman or Superman or whatever it happens to be, anything. You'll learn a lot about trends and about how these comics are shaped. And the other thing that I think has given me some perspective, and I think everybody could use a little bit, is that we like to bag on panels that have weirdly drawn faces or strange, cringy topics or other things. Well, guess what? You go back to the 80s and the 70s and some of these eras, they're in there too. You'll see some of the same nonsense there. And it might just help to go, maybe the comic industry is not in the last 5 years suddenly tipped into chaos and every story is terrible and other things. There's plenty of crazy stuff, whether it's Rob Liefeld drawing the Enchantress. He's a great guy, but drawing her like 80 feet tall. Yeah, whatever. Just there's a lot of weird art out there and there's weird moments, and you can almost take a panel or a picture from any comic in any era. You can find something that's weird. And 60s, recognizing that helps.
Yeah. 60s DC is like almost unreadable in some ways. It really is. It's like, oh my God, this is really, really bad. But
there's great stuff and there's terrible stuff throughout history, and this isn't a new phenomenon. So if you're worried, like, oh my God, this is clear evidence that the comic industry is about to collapse, look at these cringy books. It's like, yeah, actually, there's been a lot of cringy books over the years, and that, I don't know, maybe that's a weird way of looking at it, but where binging is concerned, that's given me some perspective.
Awesome. All right, Doc, you're the last one. What do you recommend people binge?
I'm binging 3 things right now. Joe Mad era Uncanny X-Men. I was about to start reading Velvet by Ed Brubaker, and I think that wasn't Sean Phillips. And third, the one thing that I've just been going crazy on was Invincible. I had read the volumes 5 and 6 in the hardcovers, and I ran out and I ordered 7 through 12 the other day, and they all came in yesterday. I'm already halfway through volume 8. So so I'm going nuts on reading Invincible because it's just a great book.
Awesome. So if you have not had enough comic book conversation, I will be over on my Twitch channel exclusively in about 5 or 10 minutes. Perch and I are going to record a segment that'll be on the channel on Monday. Then after that, Corbin's going to come visit me, and we're going to talk about Batman Curse of the White Knight. We might have some disagreements on that. I believe that video is going to be up on Tuesday or Wednesday, but we're getting those recorded for the show. If you want to see the information in full, as the videos you see on YouTube for the most part are edited down, so these should be a little bit longer and should be great. And of course, we'll take some questions afterwards if you're interested in that. The link to that Twitch channel, of course, is in the video description. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. We had a great time. Thank you to Larry Comics Incorporated. Thank you to Brian Ball from Rags. Thank you to everyone who chatted. Thank you to everyone who supported the channel. Lots of super chats. Lots of great conversation. Had a great time today, guys. Salamat po. I'm out.
Have a great week.